Hey guys, how's it going? Ghosty Rich here today, and today we're going to be doing our ball joints. First thing you're going to need to do is make sure you have some nice ball joints. I went for the teraflex heavy duty ones. Next thing you want to do, take a tire iron or 19 mil and crack all those loose. Not all the way out, just crack them loose. Because once we lift the axle up, then there'll be no grip on the ground and, well, it'll make it a lot harder to take off the tire. So crack all the bolts on this one and all the bolts on the other side. After we do that, next thing you want to do is lift your vehicle. If you have a manual, don't forget to chuck your back wheels and pull your parking brake. Go ahead and jack up your vehicle just like this, right beside the pumpkin if you want. And if you look, you can put both the jack stands underneath at the same time. But look, I got a little bit of water leaking out of the Jeep. Go figure, a leak on a Jeep? Nah. Other thing, come up here and take off all the bolts that are in here and remove the two front tires. Take out the 13 mils right here on your brake caliper so we can pop it out. Now when you go to take these out, if this starts spinning, you can either try to get a box wrench in there if you have one small enough, or you can take a pair of needle nose, cram your hand like this against the frame, and then loosen it, and then they'll come out. Just don't do it to the boot, do it to the nut. So you cram it right there between the nut and the brake, and that's only if your box wrench doesn't fit. I'll show you what I mean. Look at this. Mine won't fit between the piece there. You take those bolts out, work your caliper off. You can you'll see there's these little clips. Just slip these clips off of the rubber and then kind of do one of these. Flip it and put it right there. Easiest storage spot, and it won't get knocked over that way. You gotta pop off the 21 right here, and there is a 21. Let's see if it'll focus in. Well, either way, it looks just like this. It's just behind. After you pull out those two 21s, just put those off to the side. I'm gonna do my brakes while I'm doing this, so that's why you see the brake pads still on there, because I'm gonna remove those after. And then I'm gonna take the rotor off, and just by doing this, it's gonna take a bunch of weight off the knuckle while we're switching out our ball joints, and it gives you so much more access. That's one of the reasons why we're spending all this time getting this stuff all out of the way. Now, if you look at the other side of this bracket, you'll see that there's another rubber in that grommet. I would suggest just working it out, and that way now everything is free of that. Now that everything is loose here, this is here, my rotor is actually already loose, so I can just lift this off. I lucked out that way. If yours is a little bit stuck on there, what I would suggest doing is grabbing a rubber mallet and hitting it, put a bolt on the end. That way it doesn't just fly off, because you might have to hit it pretty hard with a rubber mallet. Make sure it's rubber, not metal. Otherwise you'll put dents in your rotor, and then you'll have to replace your brakes. With me, I'm doing it right now. So if you haven't changed your rotors ever, this is actually a good time to do it. So on the ends of this bolt, and the third bolt on the other side, and then go to the heads on this side, you'll see one head right there, and right there. A little bit of penetration fluid goes a long way, since it's been a while since those have been out. Depending on how old your Jeep is. Hopefully it's pretty old for the ball joints to go. But make sure you spray them. It's gonna make the next step a lot easier. If you have a wire brush, make sure you clean the tips of these bolts before they go through, because if you leave all that corrosion on, it's gonna make for a lot more fun to take them off. See, look at how much cleaner that is. So that way, if it starts to unscrew, it will. If you have a breaker bar and you can align it properly, 13, 12 point. Use the breaker bar. I went up and in from right here, line the socket up, and all I literally did is got that first crack just from going, and like I said, it's way up into the fender well. After I did that, take this out, use my regular ratchet, but like I said, it's just getting that first breaking loose, and you can see it going in there, which is good. So I would suggest breaking them all loose and then taking it off, just that way you don't have just one bolt holding the whole assembly in. For access to certain bolts, don't forget you could either use the steering wheel and move this, or you could use your hand and push it. And the other thing is if that's in the way, you can rotate it with hands, since we have both tires off. So that way you can access it. Same with the top one, you can do just like that, so you have a nice opening. That if you get that nice and angled like so, you clean off that bolt tip, then you just lift up, oh, just like that from that angle, and then go ahead and use your smaller ratchet. You might laugh at this one, but if you can't get a hammer in there, just even like that can get that nice and flush. You want that as flush as possible. If you're not fully on there, there's a good chance you'll strip it. Next thing you want to do, now that we have these all undone throughout here, take this tool. Yes, you should buy one. Yes, they're great for all sorts of clips. Slide it in here and pull these out of there. Once you get all the rubbers out of the grommets here, next thing we got to do is go up to where it all began. You'll see these two little nubs on the inside. Yay for good lighting. So see those little nubs? Those are actually plastic. So if you grab this and wiggle it, it'll come out and you'll see that there's a connector in behind. Disconnect that connector right there. So from back here, push on the red tab from this side. You'll see that it'll come out the other side right here. And then after you do that, you compress and pull out. So like I said, press the red in from this side. If it's not fully out, then what you'll do is you'll take your flat blade or whatever tool you have, slide this down a little more, compress the duct tab and pull it out. So just unthread and put this over here. Hey look, it's Tariq and Doug. Hello Tariq, hello Doug. Basically, we're just sliding it back and forth so that way it comes out evenly. You don't want it to not come out evenly, so look at that. Ta-da! And then out comes the axle shaft. And then upgrade to Kamali. No. Look at that beauty. So these cotter pins that are right here, go ahead and straighten them and then cut them out off these bolts. Or if you can straighten them up enough, you can try and pull them out, but it's easier usually to just cut them and then pull out the tip. Just like down here, this is probably the easier one to show you. Straighten these two up, and then you can either flush cut them or just try and pull it out as whole. Personally, cutting and then pulling out just the tip of the head is usually easier, and then we're gonna pop these bolts out. So, I didn't end up cutting it. I straightened it with the needle nose, pressed up a little bit, trying to keep it straight, and tapped lovely with a hammer. And look at that, it's coming out the back. Now you can grab it with channel locks if you want and try and wiggle it out or do whatever you want. Top one was a little harder. I ended up cutting it so there's a little bit out. And then I put my plier on the tip of it and then tapped the plier with a hammer so it sunk out a little bit, grabbed it and rolled the plier so it came out. This bolt right here, I'm using a 30 on. Up here is a 22. Go ahead if you want, scrub them a little bit, throw a little bit of penetration fluid on there, and go to town. Took it all the way off, threaded back on a few threads. Now let's do the top one, and yeah, make sure you use your breaker bar. Tell them how it's done? That's what I thought. So, she's so cheeky today. So if you take a look, we've got our bolt half threaded on. And Mika is gonna come over here and with all her absolute pure energy, going to hit this straight down like so. After you push it down, flip it out, put it off to the side. If the ball joint starts spinning, because it's on your bolt now, and yeah, look at how done this one was. This one, the top one, look at that. Not so bad, barely move it. This bottom one, easier to move than most things in life. So next thing you need to do is grab your ball joint separator. One thing I haven't gone over yet either with you is to make sure that you have the proper ball joint puller. So as you can see, or press, whatever you want to call it, pull or press, because it does both. I ordered this one off of Amazon. It was like 80 bucks. And then I also picked up this handy dandy kit for the extra 39 because it gives you the perfect pieces. So why not? I'm going to put some tags for these in the description so you can click the links and go purchase them for yourself. That way you have the right tools for when you're doing the job. have, these are the installers, so we're gonna put those off to the side. These are your removers. So when we do this, top one goes up here, just like that. Little opening, as you can see. And then this is the remover, which will go like that. Now, thing about when you're doing this, if you want to make it a little easier, you can tear this boot off. Again, it's gonna have grease in there, so you're gonna get a bit messy probably, but it's gonna allow the remover to seat a little better. If you don't care, go ahead, slap that on, and then just go for it. And I'll show you as we remove it. Make sure you shoot a little bit of lubricant on there. I'm just gonna shoot some silicone lube on like you would use on a coilover suspension, so it moves up and down a little easier. So throw a little bit of lubricant on here just so the threads pass through easier. And then this is gonna be sitting like that. And then that little cup, which is right here, if you take a look, it goes, well, in the cup. Not there, but in here. And make sure that little dimple goes into the cup. So just like this, up, on, don't do that. Slide that on. So little dimple, as we showed, up, on, that's gonna fall off probably again 100 times. This lines back up, screws on, it's super heavy. Yay, it's me, woe is me, I'm so wow. And I'm gonna hit things. And just like so. So if you take a look here, you can see we're perfectly lined up on the cup, which is what you want. And right here, the dimple just allows us to see it's on the ring. And now we put our wrench up here and just start wrenching away until this cup pushes the ball joint out. That's it.
Slave.
Exactly.
Slave.
Really?
Look at that. Let's see, that's what you want right there.
Oh, after you poop yourself. Big bangs, I thought it blew my knuckle up. I was like, hey, I could almost use my other one now. Just backed it off, literally after it pops, like switched ratchets, in and out, done. Put it off to the side, pull out the bottom one, might as well just get that out of the way and then we'll clean up our area. The bottom needs more height to be able to do this. So what we had to do is, I'm leaving the jack under the knuckle right here, and then I'm also right here having a jack stand. Again, don't just do it with your jack because your jack has wheels and there is possibility of shifting. So that's why I actually have it sitting on the jack stand and the jack is just there just in case the jack stand fails. Now, we're gonna give it a little bit more torque. Another thing you can do with the bottom, just to give it a little bit of help along, as you're tightening it, give it a couple love taps with a hammer on top. But make sure you're lined up perfectly on it. Otherwise, you're just gonna hammer into metal and that's no good. I got it super tight and we're like, oh man, it's just not wanting to go. Gave it one good solid whack and boom, ball joint drops. I mean, you've already heard it pop in the other video, so yeah. So now you can open up and take a look at your perfectly packaged balls. And one thing that you're gonna wanna do first is I would take some rags, some cleaner or some penetration fluid, whatever you wanna use, and just clean up the insides of these cups just a little bit. Don't use anything too abrasive because you don't wanna like score the inside if you can avoid it, but if you can at least just clean it up so they slide in and out a little easier, why not do it? So clean them up and then we'll line up pressing them in. So take a look, give it a rub. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you go through, I used a tiny bit of sandpaper just because I wanted to get rid of as much rust on the inside as I could. So now that I've used a tiny bit of very low grit sandpaper, like I couldn't even tell you, this is probably, what is this, 1600 grit, 1500 grit? 1150 grit, F1150. Don't know if that's a part number, but either way, now that I've done that, clean these up, we're gonna squeeze in the new ones. Now, while you're cleaning those up, hopefully you took a quick look over your ball joint instructions, but if you have an RCV joint, and trust me, you don't have it if it's stock. You're gonna only have it as if you actually went with that option and added it already. So you'll know if you have an RCV joint. So for 90% of the population, make sure your grease joints aim to the rear. And then for the other 10%, they will aim them forward. And that's for the bottom one. Top one doesn't matter, just aim straight up. So we're gonna do the top one first. So if you have some never sees, the Tin Man, go and grab it. We're gonna Tin Man these. If you've never seen Tin Man, it's literally called never sees. And the reason why you call it Tin Man is because if you get this on your clothes are silver forever. I like to wipe off the excessive. Go ahead and just wipe the inside of here, just like that. Scrape, and then redo again. You can see I have some dripping on my jack stand, so I will get that off immediately. Because like I said, if Mika were to get this in her fur, it's to the showers with her instantaneously. And this helps you for the next time if you ever have to do this again. With ball joints, make sure you do not cheap out on them. I'm serious. Yes, these teraflex ones are like 400 bucks, but I can tell you this, you do them and they'll last you a long time. If you cheap out and you buy some cheap ball joints, then yeah, your poor soul is gonna have to do this closer than you think. If you take a look, I put a line right there. It's directly between the two nubs for your grease. And I put a line there so that way as it slides in, I can tell if it's in there, and you can of course pull it off, take a look, but just try to line up the best as you can as you screw this in. So now that we have this ready, we're gonna put our cap on the top and I'll get it ready and show you us pressing it in. So the biggest thing with this Jeep Pacific kit and why you got it was for this cup. If you look, it's actually shaped on an angle, and the reason why is your axle part right here is shaped on an angle. So you want to line up that angle perfectly so that's straight up and down. And then once you do that, we line this up down here on the line right there to right there, put our C around it and start to tighten it up. Remember to go counterclockwise.
Because you're upside down.
Yeah. So righty tighty, lefty loosey. If you do that here, you'll just keep dropping it out. And you'll see it going in smoothly. Monitor it and just keep on cranking. I cranked it until it just started to flare right here. Now I'm gonna back it off. We're fully seated and let's go to the next one up here. Take this, little grease nipples, and tie them in. When you tie these in, very, very light. Remember, these aren't structural. They're just so you can put a grease gun on them. And the problem is if you crank these bad boys, you can snap them. So just go really, really light with them. And of course, if you use never sees, you can get Tin Man on you, which is fine as long as you wipe it up before you accidentally touch your clothes. Put one on each end. When I say not much, 7 mil. Just like that. Tighten them until they're tight, and then that's it. Like I said, do not go too crazy. I mean, even if you somehow do manage to strip them, it's not going to do much. So just leave them there. And if you're really worried and you did strip it, throw a little bit of the liquid thread sealant on there and then tie them back in. Take big cup, put it right there. Small cup. Line out again and just put it up here and make sure that line's right there. Put your C around and start tightening.
Teraflexing.
If you're gonna have to buy some new balls, might as well make sure they're pre-op. Take your knuckle, flip it back over, slide it up, and just lightly tie those bolts in. Before you put that bolt on, make sure you put on your ABS wire so it sits on the inside right there, and then tighten your bolt on and grab your torque wrench. Set it to 70. Make sure you lock your torque. If you've never used a torque wrench before and you just bought one, very important piece of info when you're lining that up. See how now, if that's sort of focus, let's see if I can focus in. See how that lines up. Oh, there we go. There's our hole. That's where our cotter pin's gonna go. Make sure you do the last tightening with this. Do not do it with your torque wrench, because your torque wrench, if you start torquing it way past, it can affect your spring over time. So you set it to 70 foot-pounds. After you do that, if it's not lined up, put it on your regular ratchet and just giving it a little bit more oomph. Right here, go ahead, take one of the feet, bend it down and around, and then the other one to the side and around like that. You can do it whatever way you want. I always do it like this, so that way they're in two opposing directions. Not that it really matters, I just like how it grabs like that. Now, 24 was down here, go to 22 and do the exact same thing we just did there. Same amount of foot-pounds. Make sure you look down your tube, because if the other seal that's down there is sitting cockeyed, you don't want to shove that into your diff. So I have crow's hooks. I just use this and I hooked it out. If yours is deep in there, you could use haywire, an old coat hanger, whatever you want to do. Make a hook, slide it in, hook it out. That's what they look like. Now that we have two of them, you should have two in total. We're going to lube up our shaft and then we're gonna slide those on. Finger a little bit of lube out. Oh, and just all up your shaft. Oh, honestly, you don't need to, just right up here. That's it, just up here where it's gonna seal and pop. This one's just gonna be another insetter. After that, take it in and slide. Make sure your dust shield's sitting the right way, which is like this. You can tell because of where the caliper goes. And then you lift.
It's gonna take a bit of finessing, but we'll get it in. There we go.
And then make sure that lines up where it should. Triangle up there. You can see the actual shape and everything. So now that we've got that, bam, go ahead and start to thread those 12 points back through. When you go to put this in, make sure a couple things. Right here, your brake caliper is on the right side. Watch how this goes. See how there's an open plate? Make sure that that's still good. And make sure this knuckle is straight dead on. That way you're not going all cockeyed. As you slide in, all we do is this, and make sure that is like that, perfect. Mm-hmm. And then we're just like this. Oh, and
we're in the wrong.
See this?
How did that happen?
This is the fun part. Just do that. Now that we've got that there, perfect. Sandwich it up, right there. So now line up the triangle on your dust shield, just like that. Take one of those 12 points, slide it back through. We're gonna put it in there, it's through the dust shield. Now we're gonna lightly thread it in. After you've lightly started to thread this one in, just like this, go and lightly thread in all three. Don't start tightening anything yet, because if you do, trying to line up the other two will be fun. I use the red goo because I live strong wise, and also because off-road and everything else. You could use blue. Blue is fine for not high heat situations. So after you throw a little bit of Loctite on there, you're gonna slide these in. Like I said, put all three of them in. I'd snug them up with a wrench, and then if you can get your torque wrench in there, they want 75 foot-pounds on that. So after you're done tightening these and torquing them down, again, don't forget to use your steering and move it in different directions and turn this to get your torque wrench on there properly with some extensions if needed. Next thing you're gonna wanna do is, after you've tightened those all down to 75 and moved it around like you did back then, make sure that you just did what you did before, rotating the shaft and moving the steering to get a good approach angle on the bolts. Then slip this back through here and bring and follow all your joints around for the brake. Just a reminder, fully seat, and then slide the red back in for ABS. And then you can finish clipping this in right here. And like I said, now I'm just gonna zap strap this. I left these two until I put my brake caliper bracket back on. Bend the tip, bend it another, and bend it one more time. And what that allows is for you to try and bring it up and through here, just like that. Then you can grab the tip if you don't have a camera in your hand and pull this up. And like I said, just zap strap the back pretty much right where it was. I have a new rotor because I'm not putting those back on. And you can see Tin Man again. Don't get Tin Man on yourself. And just go along the inside right here. Majorly where the metal touches, you do not need to go. And I'm also doing this inside this bag so that way I don't get myself all messy. But Tin Man always finds a way. And maybe a little bit more. It doesn't need that much. It's literally you're just brushing a little bit on here. So that way, future you loves you still. After we do this, close Tin Man. Always close Tin Man. Put off to the side. And voila. That, so shiny. So, if you're actually worried, one thing you could do for now, if I can find one, is you could put one of your acorn nuts on just to hold this in place, just so that way there's no accidental fall-offs. It shouldn't, but still, there. Next thing, a little bit of red Loctite. Do your caliper bolts. These caliper bolts, you need to screw in from the back, like so. And make sure when you screw these in that you first seat them both, then torque them down to 120 foot-pounds. I'm putting new hardware in. So make sure you hook it on the back. And after you hook it on the back, there, clicks right in. And same with this one. See how there's two shelves, one's higher than the other? The higher shelf goes to the rear of the, or not the rear, but the inside here. You can see because it actually just fits perfectly there. Pop this out, clean that off. Same with this one. Pop it out, soak it in the lube. Just like that, slide it in, pop it, lube it up. Just like this, go ahead, tighten that up, and it's gonna compress the piston back in. That way you can get it back around your pads. You can use a C-clamp like the thing over there, but once you get the piston down to about this point, go ahead, release it and slide it back on, and then thread in those other two screws with a little bit of red Loctite on them. Then 11 foot-pounds on those ones. Do not over crank them, otherwise you'll be buying a stripping kit. You have to hold on to this nut. You probably won't be able to get a ratchet in here, and even if you do, not a ratchet, but a wrench, because it might be a little thicker. And if you can't, don't worry, you can just jam a screwdriver in there and tighten the nut. I actually just held it and put it at 11 foot-pounds and we were good. Now that that is done, these are at 11 foot-pounds and cranked down with a little bit of red Loctite. Make sure this is all sealed up. You click your ABS line back on here. Let's throw the tire back on and tighten those lugs down to 110 foot-pounds. So what you should do is tighten these up by hand, and then take your wrench with the 19 mil, I think it is, and hold on to the tire and crank these in a star pattern, just like this. So it's bang, 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 or whatever. And once you get all these tightened up a little bit, drop the vehicle and then crank them to torque. Tire is down, go ahead and torque them to 110 in a star pattern. Two quick last things. One, if you hear any scraping as you're driving and you're like, oh man, I hear grinding, first check your dust shields before you freak out. Seriously, when you're in there with your hammer, knocking that axle loose, you might have bonked the dust shield. So try flexing it out or pulling the rim off and just inspect it. And second, when you turn on your Jeep, all your dummy lights are gonna be on and you might be scared and be like, oh my gosh, my ABS lights and all this other stuff. Just drive the Jeep for like literally 10 kilometers, not even, and all those dummy lights should go out. It's just because you unplugged the ABS sensor. Okay. Well, boys and squirrels, that's how you change your balls. Hope this helped you out. Thanks again Press like if it did, subscribe for more, and of course, thanks again for Teraflex, because that's a really, really nice product. Seriously, if you're looking for ball joints and you're undecisive, those Teraflex ones, not only are they really nice, but they also come with a rebuild tool so you can rebuild your ball joints.